Draft day is finally here around the NFL, but we only care about Jacksonville and Locked On Jaguars. We're going to talk about what we think the team is going to do, and we'll do it in just a second.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That's right, it is your team every day, and we thank you for making us your first listen here on Locked On Jaguars. I'm the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast. My name is Tony Wiggins. Been a member of the media down here, a credentialed member of the media for as long as I remember, almost 2 decades, and been covering the team for that time. So we'd like to get you started here on Locked On Jaguars by letting you know that we are free to subscribe to on our YouTube page. Make sure you tap in over on Locked On Jaguars. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. And once you do that, please make sure you go wherever you get your audio podcast and tap into that location so you don't miss an episode of Locked On Jaguars in that location either. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and it is a big fan, and I am a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. Also, shout out to the everydayers for making themselves everydayers, and you can do the exact same thing. All you got to do is listen to our podcast every single day here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, segment one. We're finally here on draft day. We're going to go through some rumors, some scenarios, some trade scenarios, and tell you why it all makes sense. We'll also tell you about some things that don't make sense. But what we'll also do is in segment two, we're going to talk about the it factor selections. Guys that we can make it make sense and we can make it not make sense. But there's one in particular, and I will give you comps for every single one of these players that I think the Jaguars could possibly take. And trust me, it's like 20 of them. All right. The question that everybody's going to have to answer for themselves at the end of the day is, did they get better? Did they get better? Not necessarily if they took the guy you wanted or the person in the name that you have been hearing that has been connected to them, but did they get better? And I think the answer to that question is going to be unequivocal yes, but we just have to get to it. But let's not bury the lead. Let's hit the show. Let's start with the lead battle one. The draft day is finally here. With all of the months that go by, we have a lot of fun doing mock draft prognostications and doing prospect comparisons and doing comps and trying to figure out the best way to build a team when combining the draft and free agency. Well, it all leads to a head and it culminates on a night like tonight, where every single city in the National Football League, and then some cities that don't have teams, but folks are having parties and grills are lighting up and people are taking half days. I know people that took half days off today and they're getting all ready for tonight's festivities. When their team finally gets to add college players, young players, guys living their dreams. It's like the emotions of seeing guys figure out where they're going to make millions of dollars, change the trajectory of their lives, their families' lives, and their kids that they're going to have one day if they don't already have in them. To share in that moment the happiness of the fan bases, and then from doing this professionally, to finally be able to share in that moment of, so that's what they were thinking all along when I was thinking they were thinking something else. So I get to kind of experience that with every team because I don't just cover the Jaguars. I work for Locked On NFL. I experienced that with every single team. And even before I started doing media work, what I was just doing is as a kid over the last 47, 48 years, it continues to be just as much fun for me as it always has. So a lot of woosah and sighing and deep breath taking because it means we are finally here and we're finally going to figure out what the hell they've been thinking about over there at the stadium. All of those questions get answered when they're sitting there getting ready to take a person. And one of the dudes that we all thought was ironclad going to go to the Jaguars, could be sitting right there, and then they take somebody you ain't even heard their name has been attached to. And when that happens, you can get in your feelings, or you can just do the hard work and do the examination and make it all make sense. The bottom line is whatever happens isn't an indictment on you personally. It's not an indictment. I know it feels that way. It's not an indictment on your knowledge. It's not an indictment on the people that you follow, that you trust, or your connection that told you something. It's not. It's more or less just a reminder that none of that stuff matters, because at the end of the day, they're going to move and do what they want to do and do it how they want to do it, whatever they want to do it. And we're just all here for the show, trying to figure it out and see if we can get it right. And we're going to still have more questions, even when the team makes their choice. Why did they choose him over somebody else? And a lot of those questions won't get answered until you see the big picture. Now, I would suggest that what I'm doing is telling people, stop wasting your time doing mock drafts. No, by all means, no, it's too fun. I've had a blast doing this, especially after free agency, because it gave me an idea of, okay, this is where they're going. I'll give you an example. A lot of people had the Jaguars taking an offensive lineman, an interior offensive lineman early. As soon as free agency happened and they signed Mitch Morse, I haven't seen a whole bunch of Jackson Powers Johnson. We got to take an interior player. As soon as they re-signed or restructured Brandon Sheriff and they re-signed Ezra Cleveland, all of those interior lineman drafts went right out of the window, didn't they? And that's the point that I have been trying to make to folks ever since the middle of last season. Do not get yourself set up to thinking that they're going to go and draft a guard or a center. You got to get through free agency first and see what their attitude is. What showed you what their attitude is, how they structured those contracts, and the money that they're giving out, because you know they're not going to repeat that. They're just not. They're not going to go out here and get a guard in the first round to come in and compete with Mitch Morse or Ezra Cleveland, guys that they've already paid, and Brandon Sheriff. They're not going to do that. So that's why it was very, very important to get to the point where you had to at least let free agency happen before you can start doing some mocks that are going to make sense. Because if you do them before they make sense, all it does is just give you more stuff to pile on your head and make you feel like when they don't do any of that stuff, that's just more stuff to make you feel like they did something wrong. When the correct answer is, no, we have been wrong all of this time. The 32 teams that are going to make these picks tonight, they're going to do their job. It's us that have been off. And I know a whole bunch of us, me included, get so smart sometimes that you think you're smarter than the people who actually do it for a living. And in some cases, y'all are. I might not be, but y'all are. And it still doesn't matter, and it's still irrelevant, because guess what? We don't matter at the end of the day. We are the ones, though, that are going to dissect the hell out of this pick. At least we'll dissect it all the way until tomorrow. And then once tomorrow comes, we'll start figuring out a way to explain it and justify it while we're waiting on the Jaguars to make even more selections on day 2. That's just the way it is, and that's just the way it's going to be. Some it factor selections, a lot of late rumors about certain players that might get picked by the Jaguars. And if it happens, I'm going to tell you why folks shouldn't be angry. I'm going to go through a list of those it factor picks, and I'm going to tell you who those it factor selections, they better hope that they take them, who they're going to represent. And this is one of them I'm real, real curious about. I'm going to do all that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is sponsored by Monopoly Go. If you're a competitive person like me and my family, my kids, and you love to get together during holidays and have a real, real good time talking about playing board games like Monopoly that I played for so long, but guess what? There's a new spin on Monopoly where you can just play it with a whole bunch of people, and that is called Monopoly Go. Monopoly Go has been downloaded 150 million times. It's a spin off of the old Monopoly game, the older Monopoly game that we have all grown to love so much. But now you can play with a whole bunch of people and from a whole different places all at one time. I'm talking about hundreds and hundreds of boards. And it's not just about competing, it's about having fun with your family and having a real good time with a classic game and a spin-off of that game. So get in the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now free on the App Store or Google Play. It's Monopoly Go for you, your family, and friends now on Google Play or the App Store. And I gotta let you know about today's sponsor is FanDuel. That's right, FanDuel is sponsoring today's show. Also, it's playoff time in both the NBA and the NHL, and baseball has just gotten going, and they're in full swing, also trying to position themselves for the meat of their season. And FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, second segment here on Draft Day. Draft Day is finally here. And you are on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. And we always thank you for making us your first listen. As you get closer and closer to the moment of truth, you'll start hearing and seeing a lot of things. And I woke up this morning to a whole lot of chatter about a young man named Xavier Worthy. If you're looking for traits, he has a whole bunch of them. I think he broke the record at the NFL Combine. Fastest man to ever run at the Combine. Ran like a 4.23 or something like that. Fast out of Texas, plenty tall enough, 6 feet, 6'1". What scares you to death about him, though, is 168 pounds or something like that, somewhere between 168 and 174. And that's small, and you think that doesn't necessarily fit with what Trent Baalke wants to do. Y'all thought Calvin Ridley was like just think, this dude is about 20 pounds lighter than Calvin Ridley, and Calvin Ridley was slim at 6'1". But let me tell you what Xavier Worthy has. He has an it factor, and that it factor is he looks and plays a whole lot like Deshaun Jackson, who is one of the best deep threats, all 175 pounds of him, but he is one of the best deep threats to ever play this game. And it is tempting, very, very tempting to imagine this team and this offense with a dude that can take the top off of a defense that way. It would truly, remarkably be a specialist, if you will. Now, I know that there's some criticism from people out there that say if the Jaguars take him at 17, folks are going to be mad. But if the Dolphins or the 49ers or the Chiefs took him on the back end of the first round, that they'd all be geniuses. Well, you know why? Because they'd be geniuses because they have all figured out how to do things with it factor guys that don't fit the prototype, i.e. Tyreek Hill, i.e. Jalen Waddle. Yeah, they've shown a propensity to be able to show, i.e. Deebo Samuel, to how to draw things up and use a player for who they are and not worry about who they aren't. So there are going to be teams that are going to get attaboys and pats on the back for their ability to do things. The Jaguars have not been those teams. And this is what I always talk about is when you got somebody that's an old school traits guy, they want to continue to do things the old way. And when something new comes up, it doesn't look right to them, and they're not going to even go for it. That's why you have to have someone who, while they have some identification of the things and the way they always have been done, they also have a way of seeing how things could be done and how things could go differently, and to be able to try to blend the best of both worlds. Not saying that Trent Baalke isn't willing to do that. That's why we're talking about it, because if the rumors are true, and maybe he is, and maybe he's thinking about just weaponizing Trevor, then it makes sense. It makes sense to think about anyone that can make it easier for the Jaguars to score points and to do it fast. Makes all the sense in the world. Did they come to these conclusions also by seeing Tank Dell last year and going, woo, we sure wish we had some of that? This is what I always talk about, that when you don't draft guys, you got to play against them. I mean, maybe sometimes you play against them, you learn a lesson, you say, we don't want that to happen again. Do they not want Xavier Worthy to fall to the second round in the Texans or the Titans actually pick him up and then they have to deal with it. I know they're not sitting here playing keep away, but if I can sit here and tell you what an it factor is about a player that I keep hearing being attached to the Jaguars, that will be it. I'm going to give you another one. And you guys have heard me talk about this, that Byron Murphy was not one of my favorite players. But if the Jaguars can find a way to say, you know what, we know he's 6'1" or 6 feet. We know he's 290 or 297, whatever he's going to be listed. But we also know that we're going to plant him right at 3 technique and let him pressure the quarterback from inside. That'll be fine with me. That'd be fine with me. But that means that he's your third down guy along with Eric Armstead. And y'all can forget about if they did that. Y'all can forget about all of that where they're going to move Trayvon inside stuff, because your 4 best pass rushers at that point would be Armstead, Byron Murphy, along with Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker on the outside and the even front, a 4-man even front. But he's another one. If they like it, I love it. I'm convinced that you don't need a dude that's going to start day one here. But you do need somebody that's going to have an impact, that's going to play at least 50% of the snaps. And when he's out there, cause a ruckus or change the tone and the manner in which this team plays. And both of those guys have the it factor, even though they're smaller. Both are smaller than you would think Trent Baalke would like, but they're also smaller than I would like. But when you keep hearing these names pop up on draft day, I wouldn't necessarily say that where there's smoke, there's fire, but where there's smoke, it doesn't seem like a strange place that smoke is coming from. If there was smoke coming from a creek, you'd be like, why is smoke coming from some water? But this is not it. This is actually in the woods, and smoke is exactly where it's supposed to be. So it doesn't mean it's a fire there, but it does intrigue me that at least that smoke ain't out of place. The Jags are in a different situation right now. The Jags are in a situation where, in my opinion, what they're trying to do is they're trying to have somebody that's going to come in and just have an effect on this football team. Even if it's against our traits or against what's normal, sometimes you got to do that. They say they don't look backwards, but maybe they take a peek and say, you know what, we missed on this guy, that guy, and that guy because we thought he didn't have these traits. Maybe we need to just pay more attention to the tape. So with both those guys who played their college football in Austin, Texas, I'm watching to see if that's something that the Jaguars would do. If the Jaguars go Byron Murphy and take a defensive tackle, they'd probably be taking a first swing at the best defensive tackle in the draft, and that's probably something that they're looking at. If they go for a wide receiver, if they went for someone like Xavier Murphy or Xavier Worthy, they would be taking the fastest player in the draft at the wide receiver position. So in both cases, they'd be getting what they believe is the number one in some area. And I believe it was yesterday, it may have been the day before that I mentioned that. You want the 4th or the 5th this, or do you want the first or the best at that? Either way, it could be something that I consider fresh, new, refreshing, and it also could be something where they really, really do feel that they can do something and take a swing at doing something out there and changing this football team. What if they were able to get a dude that could go crazy for 10 sacks with pressure up the middle with those guys they have already running on the outside? What if they could get a guy who scares the daylights out of the defense, that he can take the top off the defense each and every time, and at least twice a game they're sending him down there and they're throwing it deep into the middle of the field, on a post, on a sideline, so he's a skinny guy, but he can play outside. Imagine how much cushion and how much increase that helps everybody else. So I'm going to keep my mind open, keep an open mind based on what I think they should do and what I think they will do. And will tell you here why it's important that we keep an open mind and at least cheer for them to get better after day 1 and day 2, and then at least give them the benefit of the doubt of where it's going to fall. If you're watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and have to turn down the volume with all the shouting, make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you Can't miss analysis, opinions, and news. Streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the Free Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, man, we're going to discuss, did they get better, and get you all primed and ready for tonight's draft as we get ready to find out who the Jaguars will draft in the 2024 NFL draft in the first round. We'll get back to it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by LinkedIn. That's right. Let me tell you about LinkedIn Talent Solutions, especially if you run a business. If you're so busy trying to get contractors done and trying to make sure that all of the permits are signed and all of your licenses are straight, and you just haven't had a chance to really start looking at your actual personnel, well, don't fret, because LinkedIn will do that for you. In fact, when you're hiring for your small business, you really want to find quality professionals that are right for that role. And that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. It isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl, all one word, to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Third and final segment here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen, reminding you also that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the Free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every angle. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the Free Fire TV channels app. All right, so after tonight, everybody will woosah, take a deep breath. If it's not who you want or thought it was going to be, if they got you, if they tricked you, how about giving the Jaguars some credit for tricking you? How about giving the Jaguars some credit for getting you and not having the information of who they're going to pick just floating out here on the free market if it's somebody that you did not hear about from me or someone else? Give the team credit for it, because that's part of their job. Part of the job before the draft is to be as stealth as they possibly can and protect their interests. And their interests means who they're going to pick to be a part of the future for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I will give you this little caveat. I think it's going to be, this is one of the most critical picks that they could ever make. It's because they're right hanging on that line where they're barely out of playoff contention. And hopefully this is the last time they will be picking out of playoff contention. A lot about whether or not they get there will depend on who this pick will be and how much he helps either the offense or the defense. But it also might be one of the last picks that they have before Trevor Lawrence extension kicks in. And I want them to start showing, they've done it in the first round, but between rounds 2 and 5, I really want them to start showing that they can find some jewels, because they're going to have to depend more on their drafting than their ability to sign free agents here in the future. Because the bottom line is once you extend your quarterback and start taking care of your players as you start to elevate, everybody's going to want to get paid. Everybody can't get paid, so you got to pay the right people and then be able to fill in with the right people as you start to get some of that attrition. Did they get better? The answer after tonight will be yes. The only way they wouldn't be getting better is if they traded outside of the first round. And even then, I might say yes, depending on how far back they go and how much ammunition they have for day 2. This is going to be one, I think it's going to be one of the most exciting day ones we've seen from a league perspective in a while. And I think from a day 2 perspective, it's going to be very, very fun for the Jacksonville Jaguars, because I think they got something up their sleeve, and I think they're going to figure out a way to get some really, really good players. Just because they made mistakes in the past, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to give Trent Baalke and his staff, Ethan Ward, all those guys the benefit of the doubt. I think they're going to do better. I think by doing this and getting criticized and seeing things not turn out the way that they wanted to last year, Maybe they overthought things a little bit or oversimplified it. I don't know which one it was, but maybe now they can use that as motivation to continue to get better and do the things that they need to do to get better. And I'm going to leave room for them to do that, even after the pick, even if it's a head scratcher for me. Before I go nuclear and start being all super critical, I'm going to figure out the why, and try to find out and listen and figure out the why and what the thinking was. And then maybe after a day or two, I'll come to the conclusion that they're crazy and they should have done it. And I'll come back and tell you that on Monday's show. I absolutely will. So what I want y'all to do is get yourselves together. If you're going to the draft party, make sure you come up and say hi. Tell me you're every day if you run into me. If you don't, tune in tonight on Locked On NFL and Locked On Sports Today. I'm sure you'll see constant updates of who's being drafted and who the picks are. Make sure you check that out in real time. Also look for instant reaction from me once the pick is made, and then ultimately a postcast. It could be either from this studio or from the stadium, depending on logistically how I'm able to figure all of that out. But either way, you get a lot of reaction from me between tonight and tomorrow about who the Jaguars have taken, and then some analysis also by looking at the board, and I'll tell you where else they need to go on this weekend. All right, until then, man, you guys make sure you take care of each other and enjoy the draft, enjoy the draft party, enjoy your family and friends again. One of the best days of the year, and it starts today. Make sure you guys take care of it and come back tomorrow here for Locked On Jaguars. All right, good drafting and happy drafting to all of y'all.